Just before I was in the elevator and somebody talked or said lots of arguments against all these chaotic developments happening now, but no solutions. And actually I tried to bring and show you a couple of approaches, solutions to that chaotic world that we are in. And I want to start with a question, a colleague question. Actually, I ask myself, and I also want to ask you. And the question is, how can we facilitate individuals and organizations to tackle the 21st century challenges, as Preston mentioned them, to actually foster universal thriving? So how can we do good, more good than bad? And I asked this question since a couple of years, actually, and I found an answer to myself. It's not the final answer, but this is my aspired future. So what if we go and work for a company, if we can set a true sense of community, relationships, and love? What if we work in a company and find inner peace, happiness, and self-efficacy? What if we work for a company that integrates regenerative practices, concepts of circular economy, and that the company has an understanding of abundance, that actually nature gives us already abundance? What if we can work for a company where creativity is truly welcomed and you can express your full potential? What if we use technology and see technology as appropriate in certain cases? So we can apply high tech if needed, but we can also use low tech if needed. And what if most of the technology, or all technology, is actually open source and available to everybody? What if we have an understanding that we actually have only one Earth and we have to take care of it? So my agenda for today, I want to show a little bit about yesterday's versus today's world. Then I will bring and show you some new paradigms for navigating the future of work. I will shortly give you a comparison between Holacracy, Sociocracy, and Sociocracy 3.0. And then I will show you how we did as a small Drupal agency from Switzerland, how we went on that journey and how that went to maybe also inspire you. And I will give you 3 takeaways on how you can also apply these new paradigms. So about me, I'm Lukas. I'm mostly geeking about digital strategy and web technology. I'm the founder of NetNode, a small Drupal agency in Lucerne, Switzerland. And I'm also Lukas, the gardener. I'm very passionate about gardening, about composting, especially compost worms, and cycling. So we can really geek about it. So come to me and talk about the composting worms. So let's start with yesterday's world versus today's world. Well, yesterday's world in the industrial context was mostly run on oil, and still is actually today. Oil allowed us to build machinery to completely change the world, which led into growth, actually insane growth after the Second World War, where population exploded. And that was possible because there was relative stability, so stable jobs. Actually, our parents benefited from that, with stable income, which then led into consumerism. Everybody wanted to buy a car, television, refrigerators, you name it. And then obviously these multinational corporations went everywhere on the globe to sell Coca-Cola and capital flow where you can make money. And the main paradigm was, hey, competition, let's fight everybody. Either we beat them or they beat us. So management approach was, let's do it for profit. Let's install a hierarchy. Let's install command and control, planning processes, repeatable processes to actually squeeze out even more. And yeah, you can say it positively, everything was discrete or basically just intransparent. But the world has changed. There is these acronyms VUCA or also BANI world. You can look them up, and they describe how the world actually is today. But my summarization is, well, there is digital transformation. We, as Drupal developers or Drupal community people, are contributing to that. So when digital transformation is altering or even replace, disrupt markets, today's world is also increasingly more complex. So this globalization that happened is still there, and the interdependence between global supply chains is more complex than ever. And not only it's more complex, it's on an increased pace, which puts a lot of pressure to individuals and societal adaptability, basically. Also, there is a value shift. So if you compare boomers versus Gen Z, boomers wanted to have a single family house and at least a car. Gen Z is maybe more thinking about a good work-life balance and actually bringing their creativity to the world. Obviously, we have climate change. So the ecosystem breakdown, loss of biodiversity, and all its problems around it. I mean, I read a news article today that maybe today or yesterday was the highest temperature on the globe ever measured. So it's happening, and it will impact us, even as Drupal agency, at one point. Obviously, there are new tools. Preston talked about AI, robotics, and there's also VR, blockchain. I have no idea how this is going to change our society in the next 10 years. But I feel it's exciting. It's cool. It's happening. So we have yesterday's world, yesterday's management approach, and today's world. And so the question is the yesterday's world management approach still the way to go for today and tomorrow? And I mean, you know my answer. I say no, but you can ask yourself, is your organization, how you are structured, ready for today and tomorrow? I give you a couple of paradigms to navigate the future of work. And actually, we don't have to look too far. There are many methodologies known since some even decades, and they all direct in the same direction, basically. I mean, let's take agile methods, Scrum, Kanban. They try to navigate this complexity by making much smaller iterations, etc. I won't go in all of these methods or systems. I will now more talk about the underlying structures or ideas or concepts. And I want to talk about the book Reinventing Organization. I'm wondering who read and who knows this book in the audience? Okay, some do. Okay, cool. So Frederic Laloux wrote this book, I think, in 2016, 2017, somewhere there. And he went on a journey, and he saw companies that work slightly different. And he then mentioned the term teal organization. I will explain that a little bit in a minute. And what he came up is a system of circles. So there is the red circle, yellow circle, orange, green, and teal. So teal is the most outer circle. And I will quickly explain each of these circles. You can have a 2 hours talk only about these circles, so I go through very quickly, but I think you will get the concept of these circles. And I will start with the red one. So the red one, think of an organization that is in the red circle. It's an impulsive approach. The management approach could be, if you don't do what I say, I kill you. So there is one boss and then the followers, and you can think of mafia or street gang. So the management approach is basically fear-based, it's chaotic, and it's power to one person. Okay? So that's the red circle. Yellow circle, so-called traditional worldview. Management approach is We do it very structured and very bureaucratic. Think of, let's say, military, traditional churches, governments. And actually, these guys invented the hierarchy, right? They invented the replicable processes. So we can do this very structured and very bureaucratic approach. So I don't want to be too negative about it. And there is also positive things about the yellow circle. They actually achieved a kind of a global way to organize communities. Think about the Christian church. It's very hierarchical, but it's with global expansion. And they achieved to manage that. Then there is the orange circle. Orange circle's management approach is we innovate, we compete, we win and make a lot of money, work hard, play hard, right? So think of banks, multinational corporations, and basically they took the scientific approach to create, to innovate new products, bring it to market, and selling the products just for the sake of selling it. Right, so this is orange. By the way, orange circle's positive innovation was meritocracy, the one on the top bottom right, which allows everybody to go up the ladder. So no, it doesn't matter where you come from. If you are just one kid from the countryside without deep education, you can educate yourself, and if you perform, you can actually become a CEO of a multinational company. This was not possible with the circles before, so this is the orange circle. Then there is the green circle, pluralistic worldview. The management approach is, we are a family, we are all equal people, planet, profit, right? So lots of non-profits do that, lots of NGOs, maybe also a couple of triple agencies. Certainly we at NetNode see ourselves as part of green, with potential to teal. And yeah, what they try to do is really empowerment, value-driven culture, stakeholder value, instead of only shareholder value. And then Frederic Laloux found more. So very interestingly, he found organizations that worked a little bit different. And he mentioned that teal or integral worldview. And the management approach of these organizations is, we are self-managed, holistic, and an adaptive organization. We dance with the system. So whatever that means, I will talk about that a little bit. But a good example is Patagonia. I don't know if you heard the news. They institutionalized that profits go to the earth, so they protect the earth, and they are not only pay out shareholders, but most of the money goes into protecting the earth. So the purpose by selling jackets and t-shirts is not for the money only, but if there is money, we invest it in earth. And there is the concept of self-management, wholeness, evolutionary purpose. I won't go into too much details. Here, I can only scratch the surface, but there is a lot to it. So again, I question yourself. I went through these circles, and where would you place your organization in there? Are you red, orange, yellow, green, teal? It's an interesting discussion. So, what are these typical characteristics of green or teal organizations? These are actually the new paradigms you may want to adopt. One is, these organizations are organized not in hierarchies, but actually in circles. So they think that the way circles work without a central power structure is a good idea. This is a screenshot from Holacracy. So it exists with circles, subcircles. There are roles in it. A person can have multiple roles in multiple circles. You can create new circles. You can stop circles. So it's a fluid thing, right? So there is no hierarchy, there's no power structure in it. It's a fluid, circle-based organization. I mentioned roles just before. So a role is typically has a title and it has a set of accountabilities. So things this role is responsible for. It sounds like a job description, but it's more. It's not a job description, it's actually a dynamic role. So you can adapt these roles on the fly. So you can add accountabilities, you can remove it, you can rearrange roles, you can delete a role. And this is just the way you do it. Why not doing it like that? If it doesn't make sense, this role, we delete it. If this role should take on additional accountabilities, we add it. So so these companies implement dynamic roles. A very important aspect is the prototyping mindset. So it's actually an implementation of what I would call sense and response. So if you see something happening in the industry, so what do? Create a prototype. It's good enough for now and safe enough to try. What does it mean? So let's say you're a Drupal agency, no idea about decoupled projects. Why not just build a very, very small prototype, but a true prototype you're going to publish in production? It's a small site. It's good enough for now. It's not perfectly done, and it's safe enough to try. So it won't kill your company, right? And it's just this prototyping mindset that is above all. There is no central strategy saying, oh, first we have to write the concept, and then we have to approve the concept, and there is the CTO who also have to say yes to it. No. It's like, oh, there is this thing. Oh, let's try it out. Let's put it into production. It's good enough for now, safe enough to try, right? Then there is consent decision-making. So this is a bit tricky one, but it's very, very important. Consent is not consensus, and I want to explain the difference. Actually, consent means no one objects. So what does it mean? Small example. We have 3 people, they want to go to a restaurant, right? The guy on the left says, I'm vegetarian, so I want vegetarian food. The girl says, I want pizza. Let's go to the pizzeria. And the guy on the right says, I want pasta now. I want pasta. So everybody has its preference, right? If we go with consens solution, and it's actually on the very right, it's the shared preference. So this is the area where the consens happens, right? So everybody has to decide on something and agree on it. But consent is different. Consent is actually a larger area where everybody is tolerant enough to say, okay, why not? I have no objection on this. So for example, it can be like that. The girl says, do you object if we go to a pizza restaurant? To the guy with the vegetarian, says, okay, there is vegetarian pizza, no problem. I have no objection to that. So I tolerate this decision. And the guy on the right says, okay, I like pasta more now, that will be my preference, but actually I also like pizza, so I tolerate that decision. So they go to the pizzeria. And the area of tolerance to decide to go on is much larger with a consent decision. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think this is very crucial in these teal organization types. So not everybody has to agree on, but everybody says, actually, I tolerate that, right? I tolerate that. Let's go, let's experiment, let's start this project. I consent to that. It's a very powerful concept. So yeah, there's consensus and consent. Another concept, another characteristic of green and teal organization is small adjustments. It's evolution over revolution. That's something as software people we know, small iterations, sprints, not these large-scale deployments once every 6 months. Also, a characteristic is that there is actually a written rulebook or some transparent document that actually represents what the state of the organization is and what the rules and obligations are if you join the company. Holacracy, for example, has a constitution. The Holacracy constitution, it's open source, by the way. You can look it up, Holacracy constitution, GitHub. And you can say, okay, this is my rule book. I follow this rule. And everybody in the company is following this rule book. So that were the paradigms, the most important paradigms. And now I want to see them in implementation. So I compare Sociocracy, the Sociocratic circle method, Holacracy, and also Sociocracy 3.0. And each of these systems, you can have workshops, multi-day workshops. So I try to do it in 2 slides. So overarching goals of these 3 systems is, you want to have transparency transparent control of power, right? So you have this rule book. It's clear who owns the power. You have roles, you have documented roles, documented accountabilities, and it's very clear who's going to do a decision on what, right? Then there's equality in decision making. So Holacracy S3 and Sociocracy, they all know this, the consent decision making. So not everybody has to say yes, but everybody can object if they want, right? Then, obviously, it's personal and shared responsibilities. Again, very transparent, very clear who is responsible for what. And then all these systems try to be as dynamic and as adaptive as possible. So these are the 4 overarching goals of these 3 systems. Yeah, so this is the slide which includes maybe 7 days of training. But we have Holacracy, Sociocracy 3.0, and Sociocracy on the right. And each of these systems have its own, let's say, principles and circle structures. And I will quickly go through it. Holacracy has, again, as I mentioned before, the Holacratic or Holacracy constitution, and it consists of, it describes circles, subcircles, roles, accountabilities, tensions, tactical and governance meetings. And a circle is typically looks like this. In contrary, Sociocracy 3.0 is much more complex. It has 7 principles, 5 concepts, and 75 patterns. You could think of it as basically as Drupal. The core is the 7 principles and 5 concepts, and then you have 75 patterns. You can just pick and install and use it. So basically, you can bake your own constitution, your own organizational model, right? And actually, the good thing about Sociocracy 3.0, it's very flexible, and you can also pick. For example, you could pick the consent method there. It's one of the patterns. The consent decision making is one of the patterns. You can just take that with your existing structure and say, we want to try out this pattern. You don't have to install everything or set up everything. Whereas with Holacracy, you basically have to go full in or not. Yeah. Also, circle structures in Sociocracy 3.0 are very different. So there's several ways you can organize your structure of the organization. Sociocracy, in contrary, is much simpler. There are 4 core principles. It's circles, double linking, consent decision, and ongoing feedback or dynamic feedback. So it's much simpler to adopt. Yeah, so I don't want to go in too much detail at the moment, or for now, because as I said before, you can study each of them for a long time. But I want to actually talk about our journey at NetNode. So this is actually the structure we have today. So we use a tool called Holaspirit, and you see several circles, several subcircles, and inside each circle there are several roles. You have a question? Holaspirit. Holaspirit is the tool. There are 2 or 3 major tools, and we decided for Holacracy. So how did we start? The early steps, and it was, I think, around 2017, I found the book Reinventing Organization, the one I showed you before. And when I was reading it, I was like, wow, this is so interesting. And I learned a lot about distributed authority, Holacracy, and all these like concepts. And then we started to experiment within NetNode. And I think one of the first things we tried out was the consent method. Just there were stuff operationally, and then instead of saying the boss is deciding or we decide on consensus, we said, oh, let's try the consent method. So it was really about learning, experimenting. And it took a couple of years, actually, more than 2 years, that we adopt some kind of system. And in a retreat in 2020, we basically decided, the full team, we adopted Holacracy. And then it was also the moment when we started to use HolaSpirit. So from the very beginning, we had a very transparent tool. We have documented circles, documented roles, and we also used the tactical and governance meetings of HolaSpirit, and it's all transparent. So everybody can read what people decide in circles. So this was really the starting point. And if I look back, it was really, we planted seeds back then. The plant was very, very small, but we planted seeds. Since then, we made many iterations. I actually tried to make screenshots every quarter of the HolaSpirit structure. And actually, you don't see a lot of change. There was a lot of change, but it's fine-grained change. You know, it's not a revolution, it's evolution. So we added accountabilities. We created new roles. We actually deleted a full circle because we found out that it doesn't make sense. But we also realized that Holacracy as a system is not the full solution. We needed something else in parallel, and that's when we started to introduce something we called a culture book. And actually, until today, it's one of the core documents where we actually describe what is our mindset, what are the tools we are using. And since recently, we also have a small website, culture book, NetNode.ch, you can look it up. And we actually describe the tools. For example, we describe the advice process. We invented a tool called Team Antenna, which is actually measuring team health, et cetera, et cetera. So there is all these tools described, and that's on top of Holacracy, which describes the operational model and how we do meetings. There is the culture we define, and I think that's very important. We recently hired new people, and this was the document I showed them. And then I always ask, do you think this is what you want, or not really? And if they say yes, then they can join the team, and obviously all the technical stuff we can solve. But if you don't get the culture, it's not a good fit. So what's next? Basically, we want to just cultivate what we call now the NetNode forest. So we even have an image of our organization, which is a forest. So we want to grow as a tribe, we want to grow as a team, we want to grow as individuals to basically find flow, make better projects, have a positive impact on the world. But obviously we also want to plant new seeds, so especially working on soft skills. A hard one is always how to give feedback in a non-intrusive way. Non-violent communication is one of the tools we could adopt. And also, it's actually unlearning old habits. Myself, I constantly fall into, let's say, red, yellow, orange circles. And that's totally okay. So I was raised in schools, and the schools worked like as they worked. But you know, we have to really unlearn old habits and to really holistically see the world and adopt these new paradigms, which directly relates to inner work. So it's actually changing yourselves, your own perspectives on the world. And that's, I mean, it's a hard one, but it's a constant communication, working on it, and just see multiple perspectives of the world. So I'm almost finished. How could you start? So 3 things you can do. First of all, read these books. It's very inspiring. Actually, the Reinventing Organization book is free or as pay-as-you-go, available on reinventingorganization.com. You can download the PDF, read it. Then, I highly recommend to discuss these circles in your team. It maybe feels uncomfortable, but are you orange? Are you green? Are you yellow? It's a very interesting discussion. I also recommend to do the OS Canvas. I think it's very interesting, especially when you start a journey. So OS Canvas is actually taken from the business model canvas kind of idea. So you have these squares, and each square is a topic. For example, you have topic structure and space, or purpose and value, meetings and rhythm and coordination. So you have these aspects, how your organization works now, and you can just write down the current state. And then you can say, oh, are we happy with that? Should it be like that, or should we change that a little bit? So how can we change that? So start a conversation. It's a very powerful. And by the way, you don't have to start with all the fields, just pick one. So I come back to my initial calling question, and I ask you, how can we facilitate individuals and organizations to tackle 21st century challenges and foster universal thriving? I hope I could inspire you a little bit. For me, it's clear that it's not the engine that is going faster and faster, and it feels like a hamster in the wheel. I actually like the idea of an organic world, a dynamic world, and actually a world where maybe a tree dies, the tree will be compost, and then the compost will be nurturing new adventures. So with that said, are there any questions, discussions? Yes?
Hello. Hello. Yeah, thanks for the interesting presentation. It was really good. I have two questions. So one is, will you be sharing the slides also on the thing? Because I really like for example, the OS canvas and things like that. But I'd like to review it. And the other question is, you talked about unlearning things. What was for you the hardest thing to unlearn?
Oh, there are many things actually. Maybe a hard one is, I'm the founder of the company and I'm also the owner. And for me, I really want to let everybody be part of, of the innovation of the company. And the company exists for quite some time, and I was always the one who brought innovation into the company. And I have to really unlearn that. You know, it's like, it's not me who decides what's going on with the company. And my solution for that, and it's an interesting one, it's maybe if founders are here. I think the organization, I think NetNode as a forest. So it's not me per se, because if you are the founder, you sometimes think, okay, it's me, it's my company, right? But there was a point in time when I decided, okay, it's no longer me, it's its own organism. So NetNode is its own organism. And I invite everybody who wants to work and garden in the forest. Also, I'm a gardener. Of course, I'm also part of it. And maybe I'm also an important gardener because I have a lot of context and I know a lot about whatever. But I'm not the only one. And I have to respect, his garden, and we do it together, etc. So this is a learning for me, or an unlearning for me, to actually allow that.
Hello, and thank you for the presentation. I want to ask you if you encountered any problems when trying to reach a consent between persons with different level of experience.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, we have a role called, I think it's Holacracy coach. And if new people join the company, there is kind of an introduction for all these principles. And sometimes people get it immediately, sometimes it takes a bit longer. We also have one-on-ones where we actually discuss things and say, hey, what happened then, and what's your feeling, and we try to do it like that, and it's rooted in this mindset. etc., etc. So we can tackle that. And it's also okay if it doesn't always work. That's fine.
Hi, thank you for your speech. I have a question regarding how could you give someone a perspective or a different perspective on how to manage a company if you put yourself in the shoes of, I don't know, like a small business owner who invested most of his capital into this company, and now he has to decide to give up responsibility, give up control over all the processes, to give up this burden and responsibility to his coworkers and accept their direction approaches for tasks, for their philosophy, as someone who also owned a business.
Yes. Very interesting question, and it comes up very often. I think it's not, it's not a black and white thing. And for what you just told, for me, it sounds really like attention of the business owner. So attention is something you don't feel good about it, or you have an idea, or somebody has an idea and it's maybe contrary to the initial owner of the company. But then there is, in Holacracy, there is a way to process this tension. So you can process it in tactical meetings and governance meetings. And then, for example, if you're the owner and you're feared that somebody will take over the company and drive it to just destroy it because it's just a stupid idea, you can integrate that. You can add policies if you want to. That's no problem. You can do that. And maybe in the beginning, it's even needed to do that because you don't want to kill a company within a couple of months just because everybody can do everything. So what I want to say, or the answer is actually, so the answer is twofold. First of all, it's evolutionary, so it's not a revolution. And the second, and that's maybe lying, I don't want to offend you as a question holder, but your question actually includes some kind of untrust to your colleagues in the company. So nobody wants to kill the company immediately. So maybe you just need to trust them and say, maybe there is some truth. There is maybe something I don't know if they come up with an idea. And then the strategy is maybe more, how can we rephrase that big idea to a smaller one where it's then good enough for now and safe enough to try and learn on it. And maybe you will be surprised that you as the old business owner said, oh, I didn't see that. Thank you, you brought up this point.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks for your talk, and good to see it works for you and your organization. I was some years ago working as an external for a company that had implemented Holacracy for some years. And I made some interesting observations, of course, that made me very skeptical towards those models. I see it's a mental kind of model, and if it works for you, it's great. But at this company, for example, there were about 20 or 25 people, and they have read many books about holacracy and related stuff, and established circles and roles and all those things. And my view from the outside, I had the impression they had two problems. One problem, an enormous overload from tools, software tools, papers, role books, or whatever, that partly they were hiding behind. So, for example, critical decisions weren't discussed in the team, or how you call it, but people were hiding behind their role and said, it's my role, I decide, you are out. And the other observation I made, not all animals are equal. Some are more equal. They tended to build informal structures below the holacracy structures, and that led to judging colleagues. Say, he is stupid, let's give him this role, for example, he can't do any damage, and such things. For me, viewing it from the outside was very disturbing. And how would you prevent such things going on if you go with holacracy?
Yeah. First of all, I'm sad that it didn't work out. I mean, in the end, we at Neno, we don't like holacracy or the rule book. We actually never look it up. We take the stuff we think makes our work better. So we don't follow the rules fundamentally in a sense that we are just followers of holacracy. And but you know, maybe it's also okay to go back. Why not? If you find out that it's not the way to go, maybe you install a more power hierarchy. That's also okay. Actually, within holacracy, you can build a traditional power hierarchy without ease. You can do that with circle structure. I mean, in the end, it's a journey. I think from what I hear is people were not honest, actually. You know, they didn't bring their tensions to the table. I mean, maybe again, it was kind of an untrust. So there was not, you know, you don't want to show up vulnerable in the circle and say, hey, actually what we are doing is shit. And then the other side, why do you think it's shit? And then you process that tension. And if you would do that, I think you will find solutions to it. I don't know, I feel sad about it, that it didn't work for you.
More questions, anyone?
Thank you. Did you actually experience the need to manage external factors, for example, clients? So if everyone's getting like creative in this space, probably you have some external factors who have very concrete requirements, so you maybe cannot play as you want. So did you like kind of educate maybe like clients, or was there any need to manage external factors?
Surprisingly, no. So for the client, I think that it was not a shift. Maybe just that we are better organized or faster in responding tickets. And one thing we also do, and we still do actually, we still have a CEO from outside. So it's actually counterintuitive. But sometimes a client wants to see a CEO on the website, for example, or the owner of the company or whatever. Just how society works. They expect that the company has a CEO. The CEO role inside has no power, specific power or something like that. So it's also being clever on how you share that, so that clients are not thinking, oh, what are they doing? They going nuts. So it was mostly an internal process actually, and for us it made a lot of processes much more clear. So for example, we have now very clear delivery teams, 2 delivery teams. They manage their own set of projects. They implement their own kinds of small, project management processes based on the projects they serve. So it's really distributed authority, and they can manage themselves. And I think for the client, it's even a benefit in the end. Does that answer your question?
I was just wondering if also like the outcome would be influenced by doing.
Can you speak a bit louder? I can't hear you.
Is also the output or often also the output is influenced by these structures, right? So, but in case you're working for a client, you don't have the flexibility to change the output, right? No?
I don't want what the question is. Maybe you rephrase it again. Sorry.
Like the structures you're talking about.
Yes.
Like also it makes a difference in the output if you do value-based products, or if someone on top tells you do this and the output needs to look like this, what probably also often happens with clients, right? So, but if you work on a product, for example, and you try to like achieve values for someone else, and you have like this consent mechanism where people like decide themselves what the output would be. So the output would be different probably than someone expected at the beginning. So it's a process.
I see. Okay. So I show you something. I hope it works in real time. So I open up our structure on Holaspirit. And maybe something that is important to understand is a circle has a purpose. And if you act in a circle in whatever role you are, your action have to fulfill that circle's purpose. So I show you. So this is the projects and service delivery circle. So you see it here. This is basically our main operational circle, right? And then we have Team Blue, it's called, and we have Team Rocket, it's called. So let's open up Team Blue. Inside Team Blue, we have, for example, project manager, we have a developer base role, we have server operations role, visual designer, UX, etc. So you have actually everything you need to make a cool website. But then if I click on the circle, on the outer circle, there is a purpose. So it says, we create digital solutions from conception to the final go live, right? So that's the purpose of the circle. If you run a product, for example, it would be the product vision there, that's the purpose. So it cannot be that somebody who is in that circle holds 2, 3 roles, that they come and they do completely something outside. Doesn't make sense. But what they can do, they can bring attention to the table and say, hey, actually we should build this product. So what does it mean? Maybe we have to create a new circle, but then it has to go through lots of objection rounds. Is it actually valuable or not? If it went through, okay, you create a circle and maybe you have a new, better selling product. Does that make sense? Exactly.
Deliver the expected outcome.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it.
All right, I have to break it up at this point. Thanks a lot, Lukas.
Thank you.